RIP to Rickey Henderson. We're back with another Rickey Henderson podcast, greatest of all podcasts, GOAP. We are here today. I'm your host, Alex Espinoza, with my co-host, Dr. Hot Dog, Hal Gordon.
Hey, doggy, hot dog.
Got to get through the script. Got to get through the script. And we're here with diehard, or it used to be, I don't even know how to label these people anymore. They're like diehard A's fans, or they were, or fans of the franchise formerly known as the Oakland
Diehard
A's.
Oakland A's
The
fans.
diehard Oakland A's fans. I like that. But we got Aaron Cameron. If you've been on Twitter the past few years, you've probably seen his tweets. Great tweeter, that bootleg guy. Aaron, how you doing, man?
I'm excellent, guys. How are you today?
Great, man. So Hal, you were the
Could
one.
be better, but
Yeah.
but excellent. Yeah.
Under the circumstances, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Hal, like you said you wanted to reach out to Aaron, right? Because he's probably like one of the biggest Rickey fans you know. Like yeah, like what drew you to Aaron? I'm curious, like,
Well, Aaron, he's I think his son's middle name. What's your son's middle name?
My son's middle name is, in fact, Henderson.
Henderson, right?
uh,
And I think Aaron went of my one of my favorite follows on Twitter, just because, big Oakland A's fan, really thoughtful baseball fan,
hilarious,
really knows, very funny, hates pickles, which, that's okay. I'm more of a condiment guy, but I'm known for condiments, so it's rough, but we'll get over that. But I know like many fans grew up watching Rickey, and I think one of the things that struck me was your story, I think, too, on Twitter, of how your son, even though he was too young to have seen Rickey, would watch, I don't know, DVDs, VHSs. I guess it'd probably be DVDs by then. I don't know, of Rickey playing over and over and over and over again. And That reminded me, as a kid, a little kid growing up in Chicago. I would watch the VHS tape of like Walter Payton highlights over and over and over and over again, even though Walter Payton had retired by then. And I think my parents were like, oh yeah, whoever the running back of the Bears is, oh yep, that's Walter Payton again. Sure, no problem, because the helmet's on. But you can't lie about baseball like that. And yeah, I just want to get more out there for people missing Rickey, and feeling this like another crushing blow to this fandom and community. So Aaron, welcome to the pod. Why don't you tell us about just your Oakland A's fandom from the beginning?
Yeah, my fandom is a funny story, one I've told a million times. So I apologize if some of your listeners are going through this rerun here. But my fandom actually started with the Oakland Raiders. I grew up in Long Beach, not too far outside of Los Angeles. And you guys might remember back in the late 70s, the Pittsburgh Steelers were like the prototype rock star professional sports team. Mean Joe Green, Steel Curtain defense, Terry Bradshaw, the whole thing.
Harris, yeah.
And yeah, man. And they were the defending Super Bowl champions. They played the Oakland Raiders in October of 1980 on Monday Night Football. It was the first game I ever watched, first football game I ever watched on TV. It was one of those just crazy, insane back and forth games. Raiders won like 45-34, and I was hooked. And that was the year the Raiders just ran the table. And they became the first wild card team to make the Super Bowl, to win the Super Bowl. So I'm this impressionable 7-year-old kid in Long Beach, and I'm declaring my loyalties to all things Oakland. And I had no idea that they had a baseball team until a few months later. And it's like, oh, the Oakland Athletics, with this great logo, with they still have the logo with the 70s colors, the swinging A's with the white cleats on it. And it's just, for a 7-8-year-old kid, it is insane. It appeals to me in every way. And it just so happens that was Rickey's second full year in the big leagues. And so that was 1981, 1982. He breaks the stolen base record. And again, you guys probably know that this was long before baseball broadcasts were ubiquitous across America. You could only see your team if you lived in the area, or if they played the team in your area. And back then, they didn't show home games on television because the owners thought that was giving the product away. So it was only road games. So the A's would host the Angels, who were my local American League team. I'd watch, the 6 or 7 road games they'd show, not all of them, just about half of them. And between that, This Week in Baseball, and those Saturday games of the week, that was like my Rickey exposure. And it was perfect, right? Because it was like these little tastes, these little samples, so that anytime the A's were on, I was just so excited because it was a rare treat to see this man of steel, work his magic. And that was the start of it. And it just captivated me from there. And his career was so long. He retired at the end of the 2003 season. I had been out of college for 6 years at that point. So it's just mind blowing. And my thread of fandom is a straight line to his career, through friendships, through family, through acquaintances. And that's why when the news officially broke on Saturday, I was crushed, man. Just like you and all of A's fandom and baseball fandom as well. It just was a staggering gut punch that I'm still kind of wobbling through at the moment, guys.
Yeah, it's pretty surreal. I mean, but like you said, I would have loved to have seen Prime Rickey because I was born in '87 and I kind of figured out what baseball was like in the mid '90s. And by then, he's kind of, he's at the tail end of his career. So like, I could just imagine how much fun it must have been to watch Prime Rickey. Like we see the highlights or whatever, but like to watch him 162 games a year, that must have been so incredible. Like knowing every time he came up to bat, it's like, oh, this is going to be sick. And then you get to watch him mess around on the bases. Like, I mean, there's probably nobody like, there's never going to be anybody like him. Oh, I mean,
well, it was the for me growing up, the demarcation line was 1990. That was when ESPN got the national baseball broadcast rights, and baseball went from being shown nationally once a week to like 4 times a week. And the A's were the it team then. They were just off the World Series. They had all these brash, larger than life personalities. They were good. So they were on pretty much 3 or 4 times a week. And then I could see them more. And if you watch their old games, particularly on the road, in these places that at the time, like Cleveland, Detroit, were a little down as far as fandom goes. They were playing in older, decrepit stadiums, but they'd fill up. The A's were, Rolling Stones. They'd come to town, man, and it was like these stadiums, people were hanging from the rafters to see Rickey, Hendu, Canseco, McGuire, Stu. And you just, it sounds so silly and so trite to say it, but watch those broadcasts from they're on YouTube from like that 89 to 92 frame. You'll feel it because there's just this hum in the crowd. Rickey's that first batter. He's going through all of his theatrics as he comes to the plate, tapping the bat, talking to himself. And you will feel it. And yeah, all that stuff.
That was the best, dude. When he would like round first and like go into like the dugout and then like he'd be going like that, He was so far outside the line. Yeah.
There's a GIF that I use. It's the one at Old Yankee Stadium where Rickey hits the home run and he does the bat toss and the bat disappears from the screen. And Rickey takes that detour so wide he could touch the dugout. Yeah. And it's from 1990 in Yankee Stadium. And I love that gift so much because this might be a little bit before you guys' time, but there was a periodical. It was called the National Sports Daily. It was kind of like Sports Illustrated, but published every day. And they did a whole feature on Rickey. He was having this MVP season, and they did this whole riff on that bat toss. And like it just riled those New York fans. He obviously just played there, and he left under kind of the fans weren't too happy with him, and it just shut everybody up. They were just like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." He bat tossed that thing halfway up the third base line, and for my money, everybody talks Jose Bautista in the playoffs with Toronto a few years ago, but that Rickey bat toss, that was like the greatest thing ever. And it just is the quintessential essence of who he was. He goes into hostile territory and he sneers at the crowd and he performs as he often did. and you couldn't do anything about it. Just watch him take, a couple of left turns around the base pass and back to the dugout.
I've been watching a bit of old footage. They have most of the 1989 ALCS on YouTube. And I think before game 4 or something, the Blue Jays catcher, he's calling him a hot dog to the media. He goes, "Oh, he's a hot dog." And I think with some undertones there, obviously, but then he goes off and I think he hits 2 home runs that game. And I it just the I think the day in and day out of baseball is like, there's a lot of it. It can become a slog, but if you're a fan of a team and players, unlike, football or something where you see them once a week and they got helmets on, with baseball players, you're seeing them every night. You feel like, you're there for the journey with them. And when they have these larger than life personalities, it's so hard to not, I think, fall in love with them. And I think just the insanity of what he would do and all the craziness on the base pass that he would cause.
And I love how he hit his glove on his leg before he caught the ball too. Like he would just kind of like mess, he would like little things like that. Like if you're an opposing team, you probably hate him, but if he's on your team, like, oh, this is like the greatest thing ever. This guy's like having actually some fun here,
Well, he absolutely embraced that villain role, and I think he always, I hate saying stuff like this because I don't mean it to sound how it's going to sound, but he was so much smarter than he got credit for. And he played to the crowd just immaculately, perfectly. He knew exactly, he was in on the joke. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And the snatch catches, snapping the catch and banging the leg and all of that stuff. He knew that 30,000 eyes were on him and he was here for the circus. And he was all 3 rings of that circus, man. And he leaned into all of that. And he never got enough credit, I think, for understanding his role in all of this. It was very much who he was. It was very much his heart and soul. But he also was very much wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, I'm gonna add all these little pieces of flair to my game. And I know that you're watching, and don't turn away because you might miss something. And I loved that so much about him because he loved being the villain. He loved being the good guy to fans in Oakland or New York or wherever he played. But he knew what he was doing. And I love him for that because it's just like, Hal talks about the slog of a 162 game season and he's 100% right. You need guys like him. Maybe not 26 on the roster, but you need guys like him because, you just can't, you can't watch, a bunch of Kevin McReynolds out there, a bunch of Darren Erstads out there, guys who are good ball players, with, nice buzz cut haircuts, but it's like you need personality, man. And that's what Rickey was. And seeing his passing, knowing that he was one of one. And there are guys out there today who've got big personalities who I love watching. Lawrence Butler is one of my favorite guys on this current squad. But ain't nobody doing it like Rickey did it, and there's no one ever going to do it like he did it. So yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow for all of us.
Well, that's like I like your point about his like intelligence and stuff because like I said, I didn't really see his career. All I thought was he's like like a incredible athlete. Like he lived off his athleticism. But then I read John Shea's book a couple years ago, Off Base, and I highly recommend that if anybody's listening, like get John Shea's book called Off Base. It's really, really great read. He ghost wrote it, so it's like Rickey's writing, and so it's great. So it's really, really great. But it just talks about, you really get insight into how much like he knew like nuances of pitchers. He like remembered, he was one of those dudes just like encyclopedic minds, like, oh, I remember this at bat and I had all this stuff. But like he just like knew and loved the game so much. Like it was more than his athleticism. It was like, no, dude, like once he got on the bases, like if there was any crack at all, like you were screwed, you know, like he was just so good at just disrupting everything. And he knew, yeah, like he knew exactly what he was doing. He was just so intelligent, you know?
Well, I think the base stealing is a key point too, because he relied so much on meticulously studying these pitchers and keeping these mental notes of the catchers who he was so successful against. And again, I will never knock these professional athletes who can do something that only a fraction of a percentage of humanity can do. But Rickey was different than, say, like an Esteri Ruiz, who is fast as lightning, but lacks the instincts, right? I would watch Ruiz take leads, these little tiny leads off base, even with the new rules, and then take off for second and get thrown out by 3 steps. And it's like, you know, it's a process, man. You know, Deion Sanders from a generation back was the same way, very raw, you know, fast as the wind, but not a good base stealer for the most part, because he just didn't have those instincts that a Rickey did. And it's one of those things. I don't want to turn, you know, your all of your listeners and viewers to the YouTube clips, but watch him, because back in the day, they used to put the camera right on him and they just see his eyes on the pitcher, and it's like he's taking you to school. And
that's like before like film and analytics was like big part. Like this is just old school. Like, you know, I just remember this shit. You know, it's like
yeah. And it's incredibly fascinating. And I say that not just in his heyday, not just his peak in the late 80s and early 90s. Look beyond, like the Padres, the Mariners, Mets, Red Sox, Dodgers at the very end of his career. He was still doing all of that at 44 years old. You know, in the crouch. You know, eyes on the pitcher, you know, looking for the tells, for the cues. And it's one of those things where it's just such a shame that base stealing, they're trying with the new rules, the bigger bases, the pitch over rules, they're trying to bring it back. But, you know, for those of us who remember it in the 80s with the Rickeys, the Vince Colemans, the Willie McGee's, Tim Raines, it's not the same. It was work, and it was intellect, and it was this speed and instinct and cerebral combination that, you know, baseball's trying to replicate it, but you know, not to go all back in my day, but it was one of those things that I just don't think you can duplicate.
Why, you know, one question I sort of just have is, you know, he was one of one. Obviously, for lots of reasons, for just being from Oakland and playing in Oakland and having the kind of personality he did, but like, why wasn't there anyone else who like watched what he did and was like, oh, okay, this is really working for him, you know? We were talking yesterday. I was talking to Alex and I was saying, you know, it almost reminds me of what Steph did, you know, where he's like, oh, actually, don't just take shots at the line, take them all over the court and just keep throwing them up and be amazing at it. And like, eventually other players, you know, have practiced those shots and gotten good enough, and, you know, they're not as good, but are following. But there was nobody, I feel like there was no one, I mean, the stats just show nobody ever, you know, has approached his career totals. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons. First and foremost is obviously Rickey was an on-base machine, right? I think a career on-base percentage of 401, and you know, the old canard, you can't steal first base, right? So Rickey was always there. He was always on first base to begin with. So he was better than any of his contemporaries of putting himself in that situation to be on base to steal. You know, guys like Vince Coleman, who also had multiple 100 stolen base seasons, just couldn't get on base. So it wasn't going to be in the cards for him to match Rickey's numbers. And I think secondly is the fact that Rickey was this physical freak show. I've heard mixed things over the years as far as I remember reading growing up, Rickey never lifted weights. It was push-ups, sit-ups, you know, pull-ups, that type of thing. And I guess as he got older, he got more into the weight training. But he was just blessed with this you know, the durability of the running back that he was in high school when he was a kid. And he just carried that over. And you don't think it would make sense because this dude was running at breakneck speed and then head first slides, guys. It was like he was throwing himself, out of a slowly moving car for 25 years, sliding into second, sliding into third, sliding into home. And so he had that durability, that health, a little bit of luck too. I'm sure that just, blessed him over the years. And I think that's why those characteristics, those traits are why, even though there were certainly faster guys over his career, I mentioned Dion, Bo Jackson's another one, you just had this perfect storm of this, I read something just this morning that talked about, even without the steals, he was such a ridiculously great ball player in every other offensive aspect as well, that, he probably would have made the Hall of Fame anyway. I mean, the guy was just so good, so great. And I think, if anything, the stolen bases, in a weird way, kind of obscure how great this guy was. I've probably landed on top 25-ish player of all time. It's hard to break that tippy top.
I think so, yeah.
It's hard to break that tippy top tier, certainly, but Rickey is absolutely, if he's not on the Mount Rushmore, then he's in the front row of the class picture of greatest players of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think while he isn't the on Mount Rushmore of top baseball players, I think what is so just impressive about him is what he did. He's just so much better than everybody else at what he did, right? Like, you got like Barry Bonds, Willie Mays, Babe Ruth, all battling for, the best hitter of all time. But they're all right there, But if you're thinking who's the best leadoff hitter, who's the best base stealer, there's just the Mount Rushmore has one or maybe four different Rickey Henderson faces on it.
No, it does. There was The Ringer published something the last day or so that showed Major League Baseball's stolen base leaders through age 29, and then broke that off, and then from 30 and beyond. And Rickey's on the top of both of those lists, man. And it's just like, it's insane to think that he was as good, to your point, how that he was that good, but that he was that good for that long. And it's you can kind of split hairs, as he was kind of entering that nomadic phase of his career and playing a little bit less. But I mean, he was putting up, all-star type seasons up until he was about 39, 40.
Yeah, 39. I think he had like 2.5 WAR and stole 68 bases at age 39, which is insane. It's older than me.
300 for the Mets the following year. I mean, it's just, I've always maintained, and again, Hal, you're absolutely right as far as the base stealing goes and his role in that. But he should have won 4 American League MVPs, and I will go to my grave. Every time I mention this, it's always the Yankee fans and Mad England fans that give me grief, and I'm like, Rickey scored more runs that year than games he played in, which I believe he's the only guy to have done that in the quote-unquote modern era. But I look back at 89, right? He came over in the trade from the Yankees in June of 89. He put up 5.1 WAR from June 22nd to the end of the season. So in about 3 months, in a week, he was a 5-win player, which is insanely, it's incomprehensibly great. And that was a great A's team, to be clear. And obviously they had help. Canseco came back from injury at the All-Star break that year. So it wasn't just Rickey, but I thought he should have won the MVP that year as well. And then in 1981, when they gave it to Raleigh Fingers, and love for Raleigh, former A, but relief pitchers, closers got no business winning the MVP award. Rickey was the best player in the league that year. So it's just funny because it's like he's the man of steel, he's the base stealing king, and he's all of those things and more. Yes, but my goodness, I just go to his baseball reference page and look at those stats, because they're just mind blowing how great this dude was, and it's also mind blowing how underappreciated he was during his peak, because it was a lot of things, but and Rickey played an era with a lot of great players, certainly, but in the 1980s, there was that dude was untouchable. There was nobody on his level. Nobody.
Well, I bet people didn't like value walks as much back then, right?
They
Like,
didn't.
because he was like the leader of walks till Bonds came along, and I just love like
He still has the most non-intentional walks.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I mean, of course, he's still the all-time leader in runs. I mean, which makes a lot of sense. Just and he got the Rickey. I love there's that phrase, the Rickey run. Like he gets a walk, steals second, steals third, somebody knocks him in. It's like you're down 1-0, and like you just get a ground out to second, the second batter of the game, and it's like, damn, how did that happen? That's a Rickey run, dude.
Yeah, when he was at the peak of his superpowers, it was that was pretty much how every game started. Those first innings, it's like he'll walk, he'll just gingerly drop the bat at his feet and trot to first. And one of the greatest things in sports as a fan watching is when you know something's going to happen. If everybody knows something is going to happen, and you can't do shit about it, right? It's like he's stealing that bag, and you cannot stop him. And whether it's Steph bringing the ball up and shooting from the perimeter, Joe Montana at his peak, powers, finding Dwight Clark in the back of the end zone. With Rickey, it's like he's going to steal the space, and then he's going to steal another one, and it's like you cannot stop him. And there's just nothing better than seeing that. And the catcher, given the old college try to get that ball down there, and it's like, nah, you're 3 steps too late, bro. He's already in. So that was, for me as a fan, it was like this guy who was so great, knew he was great, was going to be great, and you couldn't stop him.
His batting stance too, he crouched it's like, dude, his strike zone was like this big, And pitchers hated that. Pitchers absolutely hated that, is what I read.
Yeah, I think Jim Murray, who was a longtime columnist for the LA Times, one of the best sports writers the country's ever produced, wrote that Rickey's strike zone was smaller than Hitler's heart. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty spot on. And that's another thing too, because Rickey was one of those guys who I reminded of Gary Sheffield, who had a very pronounced batting stance. He kind of had that bat waggle. Yeah, exactly. Jeff Bagwell had that sitting squat stance. These are things you would never teach a child to do. But to be clear, everybody imitated it, right? Everybody
on the playground, everybody's doing that.
But you get them on a little league field or in high school, and you would never tell a kid, hey, this is what you're going to do. It was unique, and it worked for him. And if you rack your brain, you might try to think of other players who had that pronounced crouch, but again, nobody did it like Rickey, man. And his body like snapped like a rubber band. It's like the way he would just attack baseballs out of that crouch was just like if you were to just pull him back like a slingshot and just let him go. That's how his swing was, and it was insane. Again, we've used no one else is like him. We've used one of one, and I keep coming back to those descriptors. But it's like who else could do that? He's crouched in this teeny tiny position. He's never been a called strike that he agrees with. And he's putting up 400 on base percentages and hitting 25, 28 home runs in a season. It's just breathtaking to think how much this guy could do that only this guy could do.
Yeah. So how is this going to affect your fandom, Aaron? I mean, for me, it's almost like it's like, okay, I really don't care about this franchise anymore. I mean, I didn't before, but now no, it's almost like a very clean break now. It's like, dude, 2020, like that's, I mean, I'm honestly going to track the stadium situation and probably watch like the first home game in Sacramento just to see what it's like. But then after that, I don't know, man. I mean, what's it like for you as somebody who's been watching for, over 40 years?
Well, it's funny. I've in the context of Rickey, my fandom is a clear line through his career, right? My oldest and dearest friends, guys whose weddings I was in, they were in my wedding. These are the guys that I've known since junior high. I've watched the A's. I've watched Rickey with them. So I've got a very strong familial friendship tie with these guys and with the franchise. And then on the familial side, I mentioned, my son's middle name is Henderson, right? I've saddled him with that middle name, and I was blessed that he took to baseball. It's his favorite sport. He played Little League. He traveled, played high school. He's still chasing the dream. So I've got these baseball bonds in my DNA. So as far as circling back to my fandom goes, I am sad and heartbroken, as every A's fan is, about the current situation, the current stadium situation. For me, I'm approaching 2025 with almost morbid curiosity, though. I want to see how this goes, right? I am exceedingly skeptical that they're going to be able to pull it off. I'm not rooting for a car crash, but I'm not going to turn away from one either. But then as far as my fandom goes, for me, it's always been about the players. And I understand the situation with ownership, and I agree with the fans' response in invective and vitriol towards ownership. But there are some fun guys, Lawrence Butler, Mason Miller, some fun guys whose careers I genuinely
Jacob Wilson, yeah. I mean,
dude, I'm rooting for these guys, and I want them to do well in spite of ownership. And for me, I'll be watching next year. I don't see myself going to Sacramento for any games, but I'll be watching from home and rooting for these kids, a good group of kids who didn't ask for this crap situation they landed in. I can't see myself doing Las Vegas if it ever comes to pass, just because I know what's going to happen, right? It's going to be the Raiders games, except over 81
dude,
games.
did you see this past weekend before the Jaguars game, man? And
I did.
And tickets were going for like $49, and it was like half full at kickoff, dude. It was wild, man.
Well, I think it's clear. And you guys maybe have expressed similar thoughts, or have heard other people express similar thoughts. I think what Major League Baseball has seen is in Las Vegas is, for the Raiders, sold out seats and all this revenue. And for them, all money's green. And they don't care if it comes from 80% Dodger fans or 80% Cubs fans or 80% Cardinals fans. I think they're looking for some sort of MLB Shangri-La in the middle of the desert, where they can sell these exorbitantly priced travel packages, and the A's can be essentially the Washington Generals that the Harlem Globetrotters beat up on, 360 days a year. Just part of the circus, right? I thought I read that Manfred wants instead of a team store, he wants an MLB shop where all 30 teams merchandise is sold at whatever the A's home field would be. And if you're not going to organically build up a fan base, a local fan base, and I think everybody knows that's pretty much Dodgers country out there. If you're not going to build up organically that fan base, then it is the most cynical, brazen BS money grab that there ever was. And it sucks. And I don't want to partake in baseball in a dome, baseball in a desert. And
it just doesn't feel right, man.
Yeah. And just what I think is going to be just I think they will spend more money, but I think it'll be more along the lines of what the Reds or the Marlins do, right? They have a new ballpark, and that's all well and good, but I think they'll still be higher than the Rays if they ever get their stadium situation fixed, but they're never going to be in that upper stratosphere. And teams like the Reds and the Marlins, they just exist, right? They might win 84, 85 games one year and sneak into the back door of the playoffs, but that's not what the end game is there. It's to make a little bit of money and just be one of the 30 or 32, I guess, in a few years that just exists. And that's the end game here. And it's an embarrassment, really, to how it got to this point and how it remains at this point.
It's you can't really state it better than that. I think that there's a great chance. And you know what? Here's what I actually do think. I do think that John Fisher believes that he is making a brilliant financial move here. He's betting it all, and because otherwise, we've heard that Lacob, offered him $2 billion for the team, which is more than it's worth. Frankly, it's more than it's worth. And in addition to like 15% ownership of the Warriors, which is worth far more than almost any other baseball team, other than maybe the Yankees. And he, he wants to do this. He wants to build it. He thinks that he is going to be some type. He thinks he's going to be some type of financial genius and turn this around. And there's only going to be so many times, I think, that people want to go to Las Vegas to see the ball game. And there'll still be more and more people, but the demand will be heavy at the beginning. But that won't continue. And I don't know. Yeah, I mean, is it going to be? Is it going to be that they continue? Everyone in Las Vegas continues to be Dodgers fans. It's going to be tough because they're going to be, instead of competing with the Giants, now they're competing with the Dodgers. Whew, and there's a lot of people who love baseball in Las Vegas, and that city's going to keep growing and growing. But what kills me about it is it's the whole premise of it is based off gambling. And the whole reason why gambling can be a premise to begin with is it's an industry that crushes people and takes all their money. That's why there's so much money.
Yeah.
And that sucks. That's not what baseball's supposed to be.
Yeah. Even operating under the most Pollyanna-ish, overly optimistic viewpoint. And I'm not naive. I get it. It's always been about the Almighty. I get it. It's not anything that's ever been.
The reason why there's money there is because it's beautiful, right? Like there's not money in sports and baseball just because there is. There's money there because people love it.
Yeah.
But there's money in gambling because people are addicted.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with your larger point. I do think that if they do end up out there, and I'm of the belief that even with all of the rakes that John Fisher has stepped on, I really believe this is kind of too big to fail.
Yeah,
at this point. And I think that it will be that first year, the curiosity factor, the interest, it will be real. And I think the second year probably as well, with the way the schedule works and how teams play one series at home in one city, one season, and the next season they switch. I think I can see a 2 or 3 year period where they're popping good numbers out there. But again, I don't see it long term. To your point, Hal, that novelty is going to wear off very fast. And you're just never going to convince me that people in Kansas City or Cleveland or Milwaukee are going to want to come to Las Vegas for a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday series in August. They're just not. And I'm convinced that the way they're going to structure this is much the way they're doing with Sacramento this year. They're going to put the premium games on the weekends, going to build interest, get these travel packages out here and get them to come out there. They're going to cross their fingers and hope with the other 29 or 25 teams on the schedule for these weekday games that take up July, August, September, once NFL and college football starts playing. And it's one of those things where it's just going to be the quintessential, desert mirage. It's going to look good initially, but once you get a little bit closer, a little bit farther along in the years, it ain't. And I got a degree in marketing, but I don't think you need any kind of business background to see this. And it's just so obvious to everyone. But Major League Baseball continues to, whistle past the graveyard on this. And that's the catastrophe that I'm rooting for, because I'm here for when they eventually march figuratively off the cliff on this one. And they're just like, whoops. and we all collectively can be like, what do you expect?
Yeah. I mean, Jeremy Koo, the lawyer who's been all over this, the whole stadium stuff, and he brought up an interesting point. Is like, I don't know if it's standard in every contract, but there's just like an escape clause for the A's. They can just give 14 days notice, pay back the contractor, and they can just get out of there. So I mean, there is a easy way out, but I don't know if that's standard or what. And then he also asked, like, is there any penalty for them to leave? And it doesn't look. I don't know if they didn't really clarify. I don't know if they got back to him yet on that, but it's like there is a door, like there is a way for Fisher to just kind of just go, so, but I don't know, man. I just think they're still short money, dude. I think that's what it's going to be. It's like they're still short like 400 or 500 grand or 500 million.
Yeah, I just think that I think they want this so bad, and I think
Yeah.
that Manfred is going to give Fisher every opportunity to make it happen. And I think if Fisher fails spectacularly, then I think at that point Manfred will just put this thing over his shoulders and drag it across the finish line somehow, some way. I'm hoping against hope that's not the case, but this is to Hal's point about the gambling connection in particular. This is how they're doing business in the 21st century, and they see Las Vegas as just this untapped market of free flowing cash, which is all they care about. And again, I know that's such a trite thing to say, but you've seen how the owners have been monetizing everything in these last sponsorships on the umpires' jackets, for crying out loud. They're monetizing.
Yeah, then the playoffs. Yeah, they started doing the
FTX,
helmets,
baby.
yeah.
Dude, everything. And I've long held that they've been doing so in the past 4 or 5 years because I think they want to break the union when the next CBA negotiations hit after 2026 and install a salary cap and all of these things that owners have long wanted to stop the pipeline of cash to the players and recirculate that pipeline of money back to their pockets. And I think Vegas is one of the tentpole parts of that plan. And I want it to fail. I don't want it to work, but man, I just I see Manfred talk, and I just don't see a scenario where he would ever end up with egg on his face willingly. I think just to spite all of Major League Baseball, he'll push like hell to make it work.
Bringing this back sort of full circle around, I think one of the tough or the weird sort of parts about all of this was the last time one of the last times we heard from Rickey was, that last game in the Coliseum. He said, "Oh, how can I be mad? I'm rich." You think talking to some people, sometimes myself included, just like frustrated that these players are going to go along with it, that they're going to, with one of the 50-year anniversary, the one game I went to this year, it was like the 50-year anniversary, and they had, I forget. Was it Riley Fingers or something? I think it was Riley Fingers, was the MC because, they can't bring out anyone from the front office to talk, and it's just like, and you're just like, this guy, he goes to Vegas now and, he says nice things, but also, he said everything is sort of, everything is government approved. How do you feel about Rickey knowing that he was, that he was still, employed by the A's and would never say anything bad about this?
Yeah,
group,
no,
and,
I'm glad you brought this up because I think it kind of speaks to just how complicated Rickey was.
Yeah.
And I think what I struggled with personally is that as Rickey got towards the end of his career and retirement, he was turned into a bit of a caricature by the media,
yeah,
and quite frankly by a lot of fans. Right? He was famous for his malaprops. He was famous for his quotes. Stu came on MLB Network over the weekend and talked about all the times that Rickey would say something that was everybody thought was funny, but he wasn't trying to be funny. He was an inelegant speaker. I don't think that's breaking news, right? So bringing that back around to your question, I'm not going to give him grief for answering a question honestly, maybe clunkily. So when he was similarly held up and elevated by all these same people who were like, "Hey, say something Yogi Berra-ish, Rickey, say something funny." He said what he said, and it's important to understand Rickey was, if nothing else, during his career, he was a quintessential American capitalist. He learned at the knee of Reggie Jackson about knowing his worth, knowing his value, and he was underpaid throughout the entirety of his career. And I don't think that's that's he talked about his contract a lot. He wanted to renegotiate. He was unhappy with his contract a lot, but he should have been, because he was underpaid. He signed that big deal in 1989 after the 89 season, and he was the richest player in baseball for like 20 minutes. And then 6 months later, Canseco dwarfed him, and he goes out and has the best season of his career. And Rickey was always very mindful of his value and of his worth. So I think when the microphone is in front of his face and they ask him how he feels, and he says something off the cuff about his bank account, yeah, okay, bad timing, a little gauche, but it's kind of what he's always been. And that's not to say he's always been about the money, but he's been about ensuring that he's taken care of, his family, his kids, his grandkids are taken care of. And if that's the first thing that kind of came to his mind over the emotion, over the sadness that the overwhelming majority of us felt, I'm not going to fault the guy, because I don't know what else was in his heart, what else he was feeling. And honestly, it's kind of funny to me. Anyway.
It is. At the time, I was kind of mad, but like even then, I was like, "That's pretty funny." As an economist, yeah, absolutely, right?
Well, he never cared. He never gave.
He gave the quote. He gave the quote while he's wearing these wedding gown white pants and these white buckle dress shoes, and it's just like, dude. Okay, I'm not going to get mad at anything that my grandfather here has to say, because it's clear that he's an Oakland kid, born and bred, and I've long maintained that as a fan, for me, and I won't speak for the entirety of the A's fan base, but for me, he doesn't owe me nothing. He gave it the office. He gave it the office for 25 years. He did it at a time when ball players were very well paid, but weren't getting nearly what they were worth. And Rickey always just missed that salary explosion, it seemed like. And his timing was always terrible with signing these contracts. So in my mind, Rickey, Stu, none of these guys, they don't owe the fans anything but an honest day's effort when they put the uniform on. And once they take it off, they're free to pursue their own interests, their own agendas. It hurts sometimes. Not everybody's going to be a Trevor May. Not everyone's going to be a Grant Balfour. But I get it with Rickey. I get it with Stu. I get it with Giambi. In the things that he said. And it's they gave me so much as a fan, so many moments, so many hours, so many weeks and months and years of their lives that I feel uncomfortable. And I feel selfish and entitled when I'm saying, "Hey, man, you give me more." Nah, you're good. You guys gave me enough.
Yeah, well, probably my favorite.
I think. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I was just gonna say, this little quick thing is like my favorite photo ever. I don't know if you ever seen this one. There's like it's spring training 1991. He's kissing a jar of money, and it was because it must have been a year after he got that big contract. I guess he went into the spring training the next year and wanted more money, and so all of his teammates put money in a jar and gave it to him, and he's just kissing it.
He gave the famous quote.
Yeah.
He said, if you're gonna pay me like Mike Gallego, I'm gonna play like Mike Gallego.
Yeah.
Mike Gallego standing there like going, "What the hell did I do? I'm over here."
Just catching strays. Yeah.
I think too, just whenever I've felt disappointed, with the players, old players, who are sort of going along with management there. I mean, one, like, they don't have any power. And, if Rickey Henderson and Dave Stewart had been, leading the cell, which obviously is ridiculous to even imagine. but if all these old players,
Dude,
I don't know who you
funny.
want, right? It would just be like, it's almost like silly just thinking of it. If all these old players had followed this kind of stuff, it wouldn't have changed. It wouldn't have changed shit. And I now live in DC, and I used to vend a lot of Nats games, and I often thought, in Nat Stadium, there is this one sort of little corner of, between two of the, between the skybox and the upper deck, where they have a little Gary Carter, Andre Dawson, Tim Raines, like numbers, those, and it's just this tiny little place of where the Montreal Expos retired numbers are. And it's never mentioned ever. They're not bringing Andre Dawson back to Washington to remember his heyday in Montreal. And they are, they're even as they go along with it, even if Rickey had lived 20 more years and he had thrown out the first pitch in Las Vegas on opening night, which, I think he probably would have been the person who would have done it, and everyone would have been furious. But, people would have gotten up there and clapped. But I don't really give it. He's just a guy. He's just a guy. And so they're the victims of this as well. Just as much, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I think that you talk about Gary Carter, Andre Dawson, those Expos legends who are honored in such a relatively small way in Washington D.C. And Rickey was this larger than life personality. Catfish Hunter, Vida Blue, other A's players that we've lost over the years, made very large impressions on a national level beyond just being in a baseball lineup. And I think I made this point. I was exchanging tweets with right field Will this morning, and I made this point to him as far as Major League Baseball, as far as them being a caretaker for the Oakland Athletics history. No, they're clearly, you can tell from the skid marks they left outside the Coliseum, they're not interested in that. So it's on us, right? And obviously you've got the Rickeys, you've got the X, the Stews, the Catfishes, all those guys who everybody knows. But it's the smaller names, the lesser known names. My beloved Lance Blankenship, or guys like Emil Brown, who were here for a hot minute in 2008, or
Troy
Jack
Neal.
Hannigan. Yes, and it's just these guys who were here for small moments of time, and us sharing the history, our moments, our selfies,
Justin Dusher.
Our stories.
Yes.
Justin Dusher, my guy.
Just call out some random
number 58 in the program, number one in your heart. But just remembering what their role, how, kind of circling back to your point, remembering what their role in all of this is, and we pay our tickets, we cheer, we boo, we watch, we cry, and then at the end of the day, we have each other, to talk about, like we're doing today with Rickey, in the A's going forward. And no matter where they're going to play, we've got these memories going with our spouses, our kids, our parents, and uplifting each other, that way, and remembering the history that way. And wherever this whole, ridiculous nomadic journey ends up, as an A's fan, I am just so blessed for the experience. I can't even begin to put into words, man. I know I'm older. I've experienced a world championship and things that some of the younger fans haven't seen, but for me, it's I got no complaints. I wish for a better ending, absolutely, but man, my goodness, dude, for what, 45 some years, man, this ridiculous team has been a blessing, a comfort, a frustration, an annoyance. They've been everything, man. And that's what Rickey, for me, losing him is, it takes a piece of my soul, man, because Rickey just was that guy from the infancy of my fandom to this old cynical place I am, like that one constant. And we've lost 5 guys from that 89 championship team. And all of this is just, it's just so hard to get my head around. So I'm warmed, and I'm appreciative of you guys, just keeping that torch, man. It's It's still flickering. It's still lit. We're still out here. We're still out here talking about them. And as long as we got these avenues and these opportunities, man, we'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we couldn't come up with a better pep talk right there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aaron. That was great. Dude, have you ever like written a book or something, dude? Like, I don't know. I really like like Hal said, how thoughtful you are and everything about this. It's like, yeah.
I got a book. I got a baseball book idea in my head. I keep saying I gotta
Dude, get it out there, man. I would
gotta start unwrapping it and getting to work on it. But I'm so thankful for you guys for having me on. You guys are awesome, and I'm a big fan on this end. And wish you both a very happy holiday and a kick-ass new year. And Hal, we need more new dad stories from you, because my kid's 20 now, so I get to live vicariously through you as far as all of the challenges and the diapers that you're facing.
Oh yeah, there's quite a lot of diapers.
Yeah, man.
It's right now. We're still in that spot where, last night, we had my I live down the street from my sister, which is great. And so she has a son who is 2 weeks younger than Jonah. So
wow.
she
Okay.
also has a tiny little baby, and she has a 20-month-old daughter.
Woo.
And her in-laws were in town with like a 4 and a 6-year-old or whatever. So and a bunch of the parents. So we all went out to a kid-friendly timed dinner at 4:15 at a restaurant. And about 5:15, it's like a barbecue place. About 5:15, Jonah starts getting his like, it's 5 o'clock. I'm mad at the world because there's just been too much stimulation, and I don't yet really particularly understand what blue is, and that's really confusing to me right now. The color blue is making me afraid. So I put him in the carrier, in this restaurant. Again, was still mostly empty, even though I'd been already drinking for about an hour because we started at 4:15. But the bar is like a big square in the middle of the restaurant with the tables on the sides. So I put him in the carrier, and I ordered a drink from the bar, and I just started walking around the bar, just doing laps in the restaurant. And I had maybe 2.5 drinks doing that, just popping the drink on the bar and being like, all right, when I come back in 7 seconds, have another drink ready.
It gets better. It gets better, my friend. I assure you. And before long, he'll be the one carrying you from the bar. So I assure you, it gets better.
That's all I'm looking for. That's all I'm looking for. Somebody to take care of me when I'm senile.
All right, guys.
Great. Thanks so much,
That was
Aaron.
a great chat, guys. Take care, guys.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.